Usually we do kitchen table astronomy with Hampshire College astronomer Dr. Salman Hameed, Mr. Universe, at his kitchen table in Amherst. But where better to do astronomy than on a rooftop astronomy at McConnell Hall at Smith College with Smith astronomer James Lowenthal. Thank you for joining us for the Mr. Universe segment this morning, James.
So nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
You tell us a little bit about what you do here at Smith.
I'm a professor of astronomy, so I teach classes in cosmology and time and introduction to the universe and astrophysics and that sort of thing.
That's amazing. And I want to audit one of his classes too.
Well, and I should mention that James and I sort of like shared an office wall for I think a couple of years because I had my postdoc here. And so I have fond memories of McConnell Hall and at Smith College.
We're looking at a dome where there's a brand new telescope that's going to be inaugurated soon for Smith College, right?
That's right. We have a brand new 20-inch telescope made by a company called PlaneWave that delivers beautiful, tack-sharp, knock-your-socks-off images, and we can't wait to show people the heavens with it.
Well, we're going to definitely come back for that, and I'm very excited. But what we're talking about today, while it's bright and sunny out, is dark skies. You have, for a long time, been an advocate for dark skies. It sounds like something that could be ominous, but it is not. Tell us what the dark skies movement is all about, James.
It's about protecting natural darkness at night, which is something that our bodies are programmed. We're hardwired to need darkness at night for health. When the sun goes down, our eyes detect a drop in the blue light, and that sends a signal to the brain, says start producing melatonin, and that resets your whole body clock, and it helps prevent cancer, and it helps you go to sleep. And we are not getting that anymore. We have disrupted this fundamental circuitry with this thing called light pollution.
So this is from the electric light that we have been using for the last 100 or so years, right?
That's right. About 100 years ago, everybody around the world could have seen the Milky Way from where they live. Now, something like 90% of Americans cannot see the Milky Way where they live. We have whole generations of kids growing up basically never seeing the stars.
There are...
Yeah, and if I can add, and that's a really, apart from biodiversity angle, which we are going to talk about as well, we're going to touch on that. But to me, it's mind-boggling because, as astronomers, you grow up and most people sort of hey, look at the stars. And historically, that has been the case where people have really thought about the nature of the cosmos, where we live and all of that stuff, because those questions were driven by simply looking up at the sky.
With your own eyes, without a telescope, without a James Webb Space Telescope.
There's this thing of awe that is part of that. And now for most people, it's not available. And so what kind of an impact in terms of how we think about the universe, how we think about our place, it's going to happen. Yeah, computer screen is great to see James Webb images, but there is something different when you are out in the dark sky, that embodied experience. I think is something that's missing.
I completely agree, and that's why when I ask my students, well, how many of you have never seen the Milky Way, and half the hands go up, we say, we're going to fix that. And we rent a bus and we leave Northampton. We go to darker skies where you can see the Milky Way. And we bring blankets and sleeping bags and we spread out on a field and we lie down and we look up. That's all we do. We don't even bring a telescope. We just look up. People see their first shooting stars. They see the Milky Way for the first time. They see constellations. They sing and they cry and they have really deep, meaningful experiences. And they experience that awe that Salman just referred to, that used to be a daily part of our human existence.
Maybe we appreciate it more now because it's not. So you get the awe, because you don't get it every night. I went with my family to Monte Island off the coast of Maine. You have to take like an hour-plus long ferry ride off the coast of Maine, but you're out in the middle of the ocean. And I was like, family, every night we're going out in the back, and we're going to lie down, we're going to look up. And they were mesmerized by the shooting stars, but I was like, dudes, that thing that you think looks like a cloud is the Milky Way. It's the Milky Way. It's the cloud, the ring, the outskirts of the Milky Way, and almost never are we able to see it here in the 413. But where do you take the bus to with your students if you do want to see the Milky Way somewhere locally?
There's a great map online called lightpollutionmap.info, and I encourage you to just check out wherever you are in the world, check that out, and you'll see immediately where to go. It maps the whole world in light pollution, and you'll see that the I-91 corridor, which we're on here in Northampton, is pretty heavily light polluted. If you just head east or west by half an hour or an hour, in either direction, you're likely to get to much darker skies. So sometimes we go to the Quabbin. There's a Smithy, a 95-year-old alum who lets us spread out on her apple orchard hilltop.
Awesome.
Sometimes we go the other direction. We go towards Cummington. The best would be if we spent an hour and a half driving each way. We could get to southern Vermont and get to some really dark skies, and there would be real knock your socks off Milky Way. And we'll do that yet, but for the big classes, we stick to the Cummington or the Quabbin areas.
And if I can just add, I mean, there are these dark sky sort of parks that have been built. And James, you were in New Mexico recently for the American Astronomical Society, and they were talking about that. So can you say a little bit more about that? Because there is one in Maine. I think, is that the closest one? Or
That's right. Yeah, there are two contiguous ones in Maine. Those are the only big ones on this side of the Mississippi. Again, if you look at that light pollution map, you'll see east of the Mississippi is almost solid light, but there are a couple of dark holes in the Adirondacks and in central Maine and some places along the coast. But Salman, you're right, there are official dark sky places, over 200 of them worldwide. They're administered and certified by Dark Sky International, which is based in Tucson. And there is one here in Massachusetts that's just been proposed. They're in the process of pulling the application together, and that's the island of Nantucket. It's not Monhegan, but it's still not in the middle of a big city, and they recognize that they've got a treasure there. They have a resource. They have a connection to history and culture and science and beauty, and there are some advocates there that are trying to preserve that. And they just passed their first big dark sky protection bylaw in Nantucket, and now they're pulling together an application to make it an official dark sky place.
I'm on a rooftop at Smith College, right next to their giant telescope, soon to be inaugurated, with our resident astronomer, Hampshire College's Salman Hameed, and James Lowenthal, who's an astronomy professor here at Smith, and who's been advocating for dark skies, and who recently was on Beacon Hill advocating for dark skies locally in Massachusetts. There is some pending legislation that you were speaking up for. Tell us a little bit about what's going on locally in Massachusetts in regards to dark skies.
Sure, and for a bit of context, there are 17 or 18 states in the country that have some kind of statewide control of light pollution. Massachusetts is not one of them. In fact, every New England state has some kind of control except Massachusetts. We've been trying for 25 years to get that to change. And the legislature has, for whatever reason, just not quite seen fit to act on this particular set of bills. We've got a really good pair of bills, a matching pair in the House and the Senate, Senate 2102 and House, I think, 3146. They're called the Dark Sky Bills. And they are now in the relevant committee, the Telecommunications, Utilities, and Energy Committee. And if they're passed, what they would do is set very common sense rules for all state and municipal funded projects, which is streets and parking lots and schools and UMass and things like that. And basic things like don't shine the light up into the sky, shine it down into the ground.
Yeah, I remember years ago, here in Northampton, new streetlights were put in, and they put in more energy efficient lights, but you were complaining because they didn't cap the light. So all the light was shining up into the sky as opposed to down towards the ground, which is what you're trying to light with those lights.
Yeah, we could go into the weeds on this more. The lights that Northampton put in actually do shine down only, but they also shine out sideways, and that causes a lot of glare, and it actually makes the sky glow brighter, and they're brighter than they need to be, and they're bluer than they need to be, and all of those things in our bill would be limited. In fact, I think probably the street lights in Northampton would actually be permitted under the bill. But there are lots of terrible lights that are going in every day that are not okay, that are much more egregious causers of light pollution that would be prohibited by this legislation. And I have to say, one of the great things about it, many people say, oh, that's going to cost us lots of money, right? We're going to have to rip out lots of old. No, it doesn't force anybody to change any existing lights, and it will actually save money. Because good lights are, first of all, no more expensive than bad lights. And the best way to save money on lighting is not to waste it in the first place. Make sure that the light that you're paying for is going in the right direction and not into your eyes, causing possible car crashes or worse, up into the sky.
And if I can also add, this is one of those cases. I mean, we also live in an area where there is a lot of consciousness about climate change and sort of like environmental impacts and things like that. Well, this is something where you can actually make a really good impact, but with minimal sort of like effort, in the sense that, okay, well, all you have to do is you can buy light bulbs. Yes, we are not saying not to buy light bulbs. Just buy the right ones, like that are not more inclined towards the blue light, and also just have shades. So this is something that's more about common sense, small things, but that can have a big impact. And if you don't think about it, well, the damage is quite extensive, because it's not just about astronomers, which of course we love and everybody cares about astronomers.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's about like nightlife as well. I mean, we also get a lot of sort of like fireflies, for example. I mean, they get impacted, and so there are a lot of other things, especially around dusk time. After that, they all get impacted by the lights that we have produced. They get confused and so on and so forth. So this is one of those things that, from sort of like in terms of actions, well, it's not like, hey, don't stop eating meat or that type of thing. No, this is just like, hey, you get a light bulb, yeah, get a light bulb, get the right ones, and just put a cap on it, shade on it, point them in the right direction, and that's about it, and that can make a huge impact.
What are the right ones? If they're a homeowner, what should you be looking for?
It's so easy to do. You go to any store, whether it's Foster Farrar or one of the big box stores, the lights will there'll be fixtures that you can buy for your porch if you're going to do that, or your garage, and there probably will be some set aside that are called dark sky friendly. And basically the idea is the light should be in a can facing down. That's it, not facing out sideways. If you're just going to replace a light bulb in an existing fixture, just look on the light bulb on the packaging and make sure that the color is no bluer than 2700 K. So the higher the number, the bluer the light. No bluer than 2700. Like 2200 would be fantastic. That's becoming more and more widely available. But 3000 is outside limit, and 4000 is way too blue. And don't use more than you need, and put it on a timers and a motion sensor, so that your porch light is not on all night long when it's not doing any good, except make it easier for the burglars to see your front door so they can get in. And make sure that it's shining down only. The old-fashioned light bulbs that are sending out light in all directions, if you put that in a clear glass box on your porch, that's not so good. But you could get a sort of spotlight type LED light bulb, and all these are LED, by the way. Get one with a warm color, not too bright, maybe 5 watts, it's about 500 lumens, and facing down so that it's not shining in the eyes of the people coming up the stairs, but down.
Speaking with astronomers James Lowenthal and Salman Hameed on a rooftop at Smith College and talking about dark skies. And we mentioned the two bills, the matching pair in the House and the Senate on Beacon Hill, that you went and testified on behalf of just a couple weeks ago. And we talked about how municipally that would work. Any other things in these bills that we would be looking out for that we should know about to help protect light pollution, to help protect our dark skies?
Sure. There's a snafu currently written into the way the state works. That is an incentive for cities and towns to lose money and waste energy, and we want to fix that. Now, the way it works is this: every city in the state has some contract to power their street lights, and the street light tariff, the pricing scheme, is done in segments, and the first segment is 0 to 50 watts, and they call that an average of 25 watts. So a single street light, and they don't meter the street lights, they don't actually measure, they just assume, well, your street light's going to be on for X hours a year, we'll just assume that it's a 25 watt street light. But now with LEDs, street lights are often much less than 25 watts. You could put in a 10 watt street light and it might be plenty bright enough for you, but you're still going to pay for 25 watts. So this is a clear incentive for cities and towns to keep actually their lights on brighter than they need to be. Otherwise, they're going to be paying for money for electricity that they're not actually using, and our bill would help change that.
So it incentivizes them to not have them as bright or on as long.
That's right. Our bill would require the utilities to allow the lower wattage lights to be properly accounted for, so that cities and towns will then be able, if they want, to do the right thing, to say, oh, I'm just going to put in a 15 watt street light and be billed only for 15 watts for that street light.
You have many times, either through a telescope or with your own eyes and your own dark sky experiences, seen what I've been calling the cloud of the Milky Way. As astronomers, What is that? And why is that amazing? What is awe-inspiring about that for you that you think people should incentivize them to want to go see it for themselves? Salman?
I mean, first of all, that's not a cloud, right? I mean, you see clouds and you go like, well, that's what it was. Here, you are seeing so many stars that you cannot distinguish them from one another. And that is the Milky Way galaxy. So we are
where we live. It's our home.
We are on the outskirts of it. So what is happening is you are looking inwards towards our disk galaxy. But it's not just the clouds. What I find sort of like, more fascinating is where there are darker spots in that cloud. Because those are actually dust clouds which are in the Milky Way. And it's not that there are no stars in there. It's because it's blocking light from the stars behind it. And those dust clouds are part of the Milky Way galaxy. So you are seeing so many things in our own galaxy simply by looking up. And it just gives you a perspective of we are on the outskirts. At that particular time, the Earth is at a location where it's nighttime, and you are looking inwards into the galaxy.
What about you, James? What inspires you about when you get to see the Milky Way in a dark sky situation?
There's so many things. Salman, you've referred a couple of times to the need for us to connect to awe and the human spirit that is uplifted when we experience that awe, and that seeing the night sky and our place in it is a surefire way to do that. Almost every culture in the world has looked to the skies for inspiration and for religion and for cosmology and for mythology and for their origin stories. And the Milky Way always plays a role in that. Here in the Northeast, the Seneca people lived close to here. They saw the Milky Way as a path to their elders in the sky. Many cultures see the individual stars as their elders. They're connecting directly with their ancestry when they look to the sky in the Milky Way. Astrophysically, I love to look at the Milky Way and think, oh, that's like a giant wagon wheel, and we're inside it. We're like an ant on a spoke on the wagon wheel, partway from the hub out to the rim, and it's 100,000 light years across. So I love to try to get beyond what it looks like a two-dimensional screen of the sky and think about the tremendous depth. Salman, you talked about the dark lanes, the dark patches in the Milky Way. There were cultures that actually had constellations based on the dark parts, especially in the southern hemisphere, in Australia and in South America. There's a famous one, the kiwi, in the kiwi bird in New Zealand. They see the shape of a kiwi in the dark dust lanes. So it's great fun, and it's inspiring to connect today's astrophysics with the culture of our ancestors.
And I should mention that the southern hemisphere, Milky Way from the southern hemisphere, it's actually really much cooler than the northern hemisphere because it's like right in the middle, it's right up on top where the center of the Milky Way is. So that is one sad part about northern hemisphere, but it is really amazing. So, we shouldn't be hemispherists regarding this.
And we get the northern lights.
That's
We
true.
do get
Although they think they have southern lights too, don't they? They have,
They do, but the northern lights are better.
Okay, cool. These two bills are on Beacon Hill right now. What's the anticipated timeline for a vote, and what should people do if they want to support it?
Oh, thank you so much for that. It would be so great if people could just write a simple email or pick up the phone and call their legislators. It's very easy to do. You just Google how to find my Massachusetts legislator, and you'll quickly find the phone number or email for your state rep and your state senator, and just do that. Ask them to support the dark sky bills, and quickly just say why it's important to you. Because I want my kid to be able to see the Milky Way. Because it's important for pollinating insects, which are severely impacted by light pollution. Because it's important for migrating birds, which I care about. 100 million to 1 billion birds die every year in the United States due to light pollution. They get confused by light pollution, they circle overhead until they drop dead, or they crash into buildings that are illuminated at night. For whatever reason, whether it's human health or the sky or energy waste or animal life, tell your representatives, this is important to me, please pass the dark sky bill.
And if people want to find that map where the dark skies might be close to them, what's the name of that the website to go to again?
Lightpollutionmap.info.
And the goal here is that eventually we will have from fabulous 413 to fabulously dark 413.
I love it.
I just want to, thanks for reminding me of that, Salman. I just want to add that, in fact, astrotourism is a thing, and it's growing. People want to see the dark sky. You mentioned a couple of minutes ago the dark sky sites in Maine that have been set aside, the dark sky reserves. People are paying good money to pack up their bags, get themselves up there, and camp out or stay in a lodge and stay up past midnight, soaking into the light under the light of the Milky Way. People actually do that here in Western Massachusetts. There are folks who come up from the New York City area every year and camp at Peppermint Park in Worthington, and it's a destination. In fact, even here in the 413, we've had people come out to the McLeish Field Station to stargaze from the Boston area. So it can help the local economy. It's certainly part of who we are here, that we relish the outdoors, we relish the natural world, and a naturally dark sky is part of that.
And it's internationally too, because in Pakistan I know that there are sort of like, again, people go in the northern areas over there towards the mountains, and also there is Balochistan, one of the provinces, it's very dark. So even though, I mean, I grew up in Karachi, which like, you know, there was no dark sky over there except when you had power breakdowns, which happened frequently. But yeah, so astrotourism, that's, I mean, really interesting, and that's also one of those cases. Look, how much we are willing to pay to seek out dark sky, but you can actually have dark sky where you live with small steps that you can do that.
Light pollution is a global problem with a local solution. All you have to do is turn out the lights. It's not like air pollution or water pollution or climate change where it's going to linger. If we stop producing CO2 right now, it's still the effects are going to linger for years and years. No. Light pollution, you turn the light off, the problem goes away right away.
At the speed of light, as it were.
At the speed of light.
Astronomer James Lowenthal from Smith and Hampshire College astronomer Dr. Salman Hameed, thank you so much.
Thank you, Monte. Thanks, Salman.
Thank you, James.